Yellow Vests Movement Timeline. 17th of November, Act I. The protests began on November 17, 2018, and attracted over 300,000 people across France, with protesters constructing barricades and blocking roads. John Litchfield, a journalist who witnessed the riots, described them as insurrectional. In addition to roads, protesters also blocked as many as 10 fuel depots. On this first day of protests, a 63-year-old pensioner was run over by a motorist in Le Pont de Beauvoisin while she was demonstrating at a roundabout at the entrance to a commercial zone. A motorcyclist died after being struck the same day by a van trying to get around a barricade. By 21st of November, 585 civilians had been injured, 16 severely, and 115 police officers, 3 seriously. Protests also occurred in the French overseas region of Réunion, where the situation deteriorated into looting and riots. Schools on the island were closed for 3 days after protesters blocked access to roads. On 21st of November, President Macron ordered the deployment of troops to the island to calm the violence. 24th of November, Act II. With the protests in Paris having raised tensions the previous week, the Interior Ministry agreed to allow a gathering on 24th of November at the Champ de Mars. The protests attracted 106,000 people all across France, only 8,000 of whom were in Paris, where the protests turned violent. Protesters lit fires in the streets, tore down signs, built barricades and pulled up cobblestones. Police resorted to tear gas and water cannons to disperse the protesters. On 26th of November, an official estimated that the riots in Paris during the 2 previous days had cost up to €1.5 million in damage. 200 additional workers were assigned to assist with the cleanup and repair work. 1st of December, Act III. A protest called Act III, Macron Quits was organized for 1st of December. Yellow jackets briefly occupied the runway at Nantes-Atlantique Airport and prevented access to Nice-Côte d'Azur Airport. Vinci autoroutes reported toll booths were blocked on 20 major arteries all across France. In Marseille, where demonstrations have been frequent since the 5th of November collapse of a building and the evacuation of the surrounding neighborhood, an 80-year-old Algerian woman trying to close her shutters was hit by shards from a police tear gas canister, later dying while in surgery. A second motorist was killed on the 3rd weekend after crashing his van into stopped lorries at a barricade on the Arles bypass. More than 100 cars were burned in Paris during the protest on 1st of December, and the Arc de Triomphe was vandalized. On the following Monday, Paris Mayor Anne Hidalgo estimated the property damages at €34 million. 8th of December, Act IV. Protests turned violent for the second week in a row in Le Puy-en-Velay. Civil unrest marred the Festival of Lights in both Lyon and Saint-Étienne. The A6 motorway was again blocked north of Lyon in Villefranche-sur-Saône. Paris experienced protests for the 4th consecutive week. Many shops were boarded up in anticipation of violence, with the Louvre, Eiffel Tower and the Paris Opera also closed. Police assembled steel fences around the Élysée Palace and deployed armored vehicles on the streets in an attempt to limit the violence. 10th of December, Macron's televised address. In his 10th of December speech to the French people in response to the movement, Macron pledged a €100 per month increase in the minimum wage in 2019, the exclusion of charges and taxes on overtime hours in 2019, and on any 2018 end-of-year bonuses paid to employees. Macron likewise announced that pensioners on low incomes would be excluded from an increase in the CSG in 2019. He stood by his replacement of the solidarity tax on wealth with increases in property taxes. The broadcast was watched by more than 23 million people, making it the most viewed political speech in French history. After investigation, it became apparent that the minimum wage itself would not be raised by €100 a month, but that those eligible would see an increase in the activity bonus paid by the CAF. On 11th of December, after having declared a state of economic and social emergency the day before, Macron invited representatives of the French banks to the Élysée to announce that the banks had agreed to freeze their prices in 2019 and to permanently limit incident-related fees to €25 a month for people in extreme financial difficulty, as determined by the Bank of France. 15th of December, Act V. In the wake of the 2018 Strasbourg attack, the government asked protesters to stay off the streets. According to the Paris prefecture estimates, there were 8,000 police for 2,200 demonstrators in Paris. The Minister of the Interior estimated that 66,000 people protested in France on 15 December. Conflict arose in Bordeaux, Toulouse, Marseille, Lyon, and Paris. At the end of the day, the Interior Minister called for the roundabouts, occupied since 17 November, to be liberated. 22nd of December, Act 6. Demonstrations continued throughout the country. The Ministry of the Interior announced a participation figure almost half that of the previous week, with 38,600 demonstrators throughout France, including 2,000 in Paris according to the Prefecture of Police. Versailles Palace was closed. The 33-year-old truck driver who made the call on Facebook to gather in Versailles but then switched destinations to Montmartre was arrested for organizing an undeclared demonstration and participating in a violent group. Secretary of State at the Interior Ministry Laurent Nunez said that the organizer carried a truncheon and will be summoned in court. Protesters blocked border traffic to Switzerland at Cluses-at-Mijou. They were dispersed after 1 hour by police. Similar operations were conducted at the Spanish, Italian, German, and Belgian borders. 2 distribution platforms were blocked in Montélimar, EasyDis, Group Casino, and Amazon. Overall, at least 220 people were arrested in the country, including 142 in Paris. A motorist was killed on 21st of December when his car hit a truck that was stopped at a blockade in Perpignan, the 10th fatality overall.